All right, we are going to right now start to write our first Node app, and this will not include a database. I just decided we could have put a database in this part, but for what we're doing, it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. All right, so we're going to start this one a little bit differently. I'd like you to go out to GitHub, please. And out on GitHub, I'd like you to click your button here and your new repository, or however you do a new repository. I know there's other ways of doing it as well. And we're going to call this stock app node. Okay? If you don't like that name exactly, you can make it differently. Now, one of the reasons we're breaking this up over 2 days is most of the logic that we have to do. It's not real long, but it's fairly, I wouldn't even know if I call it complex. It's different. So we're going to look at that tomorrow, and we're going to see if tomorrow we can get you Heroku accounts and push this thing out to Heroku as well. Okay. All right. So you've got all that. Again, I keep mine public. Yours should be private. You already know all this stuff. Click your Create Repository button. And you'll probably want to copy this line. If you don't want to copy it now, that's fine, but have that available because we're going to use that. All right. And once you're there, go back into here. Let's just do it from right here because it'll be the easiest to do it right here. So let's right mouse click here, choose new folder. We're going to call it the same exact thing. So stock, app, nodes, caseness, etc. Everything the same. Okay. All right. Go ahead and open that up, and let's just throw not just a text document in there, and we're going to just call this server.js. All right. Yes, we want to change the extension. Okay. Then you can come in and open that up with Node, or with code. So open that up with VS Code, please, Visual Studio Code. All right, so that's what we have. Questions, problems? Anybody?
Server.js, was that a folder or a file?
No, it's a file.
Okay.
It's going to be our JavaScript file where we put our logic. We're going to have other files and folders and stuff, but we'll worry about that just a bit. The other thing I'd like you to do, please, is go back to where we're here. So I'm back at my folder explorer window right here. Right mouse click and choose Git Bash here. Again, we've done this kind of thing before, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. All right. Now, you know this. You don't have to type this in, but you know right now if I type in git status, it's going to give me an error message because we have not yet created a Git repository in here. And you also know how to do that with a Git init, so that you can do, please. All right, so just put a Git init in there. And again, that creates the empty repository for you, and you've got your .git file right there. That's good. So there's not really much of anything that we have to do in here anymore, except if you go back to your GitHub page that we were just at, now we can grab this git remote, add origin, etc. All right, we can right mouse click on that and copy, and then just paste it into here. Again, yours will be different, of course, because it won't have JP Scott Rankin. Does everything we've done so far make sense to everybody? All right, hit enter. If it comes back with just your prompt like that, it worked. All right, so I'm just going to clear the screen. All right, and I'm going to minimize this for now. We'll worry about that later, okay? And I'm going to go back to my file that's open in VS Code. So I'm going to go back to here and back to server.js. All right. Now, as we have done before, we could just go in and start typing, but you know this now, so I guess we can't keep this open. Let's make our package.json file right now. So you know how to do this. It's npm init. We're not going to do the -y, okay? We're going to do the npm init, hit enter. I'm going to actually make this big so you can see all of it. Stock app node, yeah, that's what we'd want. Version 1 is fine. Description, node.js app grabbing stock info from an internet API, something like that. Again, what you put in there isn't that important, but you really should put some kind of a description. Hit enter. The entry point, we've now created server.js. If we had not created it, it would default to index.js. That name isn't that important, but most people call their file that's going to actually run the program either server.js to denote that it's a server side file or app.js. All right, so enter. Test command, there is none. Notice it hopefully filled in your Git repository for you. All right, anybody that it didn't? Okay, so it's smart. It's smart enough that it knows that. It looked for that .git folder, etc., and it knows that it's there. So that's good. Keywords, we won't. Again, if you wanted to, you could put node.js, express, etc. It's not that important, so we're just going to leave that off. The author, go ahead and put in your name. The license, I've been using MIT lately because it's open source. All right, and that's what you should have then. Yours should look almost identical to mine when you get done with that. Is this okay? Just hit enter. Now, one thing that I've been doing lately, and I know it's you know, what's the old saying? It's like better safe than sorry type of mode, is we're going to be adding stuff in here, like we'll add Express and we'll add NodeMon, etc. After I add this stuff, I just keep going back into package.json to make sure that it's there. Now, the easiest way to do that then is to just keep this open. So have it open in another window. So I'm going to have both of these open. So I can go back and forth if I want to between this one and this one. Does that make sense? You may notice too that this is bigger than it was before. Notice it's got home page, etc. It's got all this stuff in it. All right. I didn't put this in. Probably you have the same stuff. I don't think it's going to hurt if you leave it in there. I don't even think it would hurt if you'd remove it. This is the key line that we wanted. Here is this one to let it know what our GitHub repository is. Okay? All right. So, again, with much of this stuff that we're going to do in here right now, of course, the order is not going to matter. All right. But the first thing I'd like to do, and you saw this already, is we're going to go in and we're going to add NodeMon so we don't have to keep stopping the server. So again, it's npm I NodeMon. Now before you don't hit enter though, NodeMon. Now if I did it like that, it's going to make it a regular developer dependency. We don't want that. We want it to be a development dependency. So you can say -d. And I told you the order doesn't matter. Though the three things, the I, the NodeMon, and the -d really don't matter as far as the order goes. But put that in and hit enter. And that should add NodeMon for us momentarily, hopefully. There it is. All right. And you can see when it did that because you've heard this before from me. Now we've got our node modules file, right? And you can see it's got a lot of stuff in there. Plus you can see if I jump back into here, I now have a developer dependency. Okay, that shouldn't be anything new. All right, but again, if I repeat some of this stuff, like I said, yesterday at least, or the other day when I taped, I didn't have sound. So if Gabriel's watching this, because I keep sending him the links, the first two lectures I did on Node, the links appeared to have sound. The second two, they appear to not have sound. All right, so that's the first thing that we're going to do. And remember, when we do this, we want to do two things. First, we want to go up into here, and we want to remove this test line because we really don't need it. All right, so we'll remove that line. And then after, we do want that start line. All right, Heroku is going to need this line when we actually put this thing out on the internet tomorrow, okay? So we want to put a comma here and hit enter. Again, historically, people call this dev. You don't have to. You can call it virtually anything you want to call it, except start because you're already using that name. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So I'm going to put in here nodemon server.js. Make sure you've got the comma here at the end of line 7. Now, a couple things. First of all, I've said this to you before, you don't need the .js on either one of those. The system put it in on the first one, so I just put it in on the other one, but you don't have to. It defaults to a .js file, all right? But it doesn't hurt at all to leave that in there. That's totally fine. All right, so I'm going to save, just do my Control S, and now I'm going to jump back into here. All right. All right. So now we're going to start typing in some code. As we type it in, I'm not going to put in a lot of comments, but I'm going to explain to you what we're using, why we're using it, etc. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to put in here is const path equals require path. Now you saw this the other day, and you know that is a built-in Node module. So we don't have to install that. All right. So I'm just going to put it in just like that. Again, if you want comments in there, you put them in. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say const express equals require express. You know this from the other day, that is not a core module. So that is something in just a minute we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to install that. Does that make sense to people, the difference between...
You spelled express wrong.
Okay, but the difference, thank you, between a core module and a non-core module, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, thank you. All right, then remember to start this, you have to say const app equals express. Now, that said, you don't have to call it app, but historically, standards-wise, that's what people call it. All right? And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to set our port right away. So I'm going to say const port, big P. You don't have to, but I'm going to make it big P equals process.env.port, or 5000 should work just fine. Now, remember with what's there on the screen in line 4, that says we are creating a constant variable named port. And what it's saying is whatever software we're running this on, if it already has a set port for it, use that. And if it doesn't, use port 5000. Does that make sense to everyone? Again, these are just standard types of things that people do. All right? All right. And again, I'm not saying I'm doing everything in the perfect order, or I'm not doing it in the perfect order, but sometimes when I think of things, because I didn't have it in my notes, let's go in here, click down here. So just click in the blank area that's right here and choose new file and put in here .git ignore. All lowercase, must start with a period. And hit enter. And I believe the only thing we're going to need to put in there is our node modules directory. And again, what that is saying is eventually when we push this thing to Heroku, we have to first push it to GitHub. All right. And when we push this, it's telling it to not include that. Remember that if you do it, I could remove the node modules file right now. I'm not going to. I did it the other day. But we could remove this and then just add our git bash command line, type in npm install, and it would bring it all back. All right. All right, just to keep this simple. So that should be all we need from this particular file. So I'm going to do a save and I'm going to close it. I shouldn't need this file anymore. If I forgot anything, we'll put it in later, but I'm not worried about it. I don't think we have. So we're going to make sure this works. App.listen, port, and again, remember this is known as an arrow function right here. All right, we're just going to do a console.log use your backticks here, not regular ticks, use your backticks. Server running on port, then a $, and inside of curly braces, put your variable name in there. So if this works in just a couple moments, if this works, all right, then in here, our server is not running right now, but we're going to start it up. And once we start it up, it should give a message right away that says server is running on port 5000. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, before we do that though, so if you have your server, if you tried running it, make sure it's off because we have not installed Express. We're going to get an error right now because we're trying to use Express and we have not installed it. So we're going to do an npm I Express, just like that. npm space I space Express and hit enter. And that should install as part of our package.json file. All right, that should install it. If I go back to my package.json, all right, there's my dependency. So again, note there is a difference between dev dependencies and dependencies. Right now, we are what's known as being in development mode. That's actually what we're working in right now. When we push this thing out to Heroku tomorrow, we will be in production mode. When you are in production mode, the system doesn't give a hoot. It basically, if any dev dependencies are in there, it ignores them. The ones we care about are the ones that just say dependencies. All right? So this should be fine. I shouldn't even have to save it, but I'll save it anyway. That's fine. And now I should be able to come in here and clear my screen and say npm run dev. And when I do that, it should come up. And hopefully it's going to say that it's up and running on that port. I don't know why it's taken that long, unless I made an error in what I typed, but I didn't think I did. Let's take a quick look in here. Console.log, server running on port. No, I think that's all correct.
Something wasn't saved.
That could be. It might be that I haven't saved my file. That would actually be a really good thing to do. All right, so file, let's just do a save all. All right, now let's see if the server restarts by itself. There it is. Thank you. Okay. Is there anything we've done so far that doesn't make sense to anyone? All right, a lot of it has been repetition because we've been doing the same kind of stuff. All right, now we're going to do something. It's going to fail. I'm just telling you right now, we're going to do something, not on purpose, but it's going to fail. All right, so I want you to go in and open up a new window in your browser and type in localhost 5000 and hit enter. And if you get that message, that's right where we should be. Again, what that means is it's looking for a get route for our program. We haven't put one in yet. All right. When we write this program, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our routes. There won't be many of them, but we're going to take our routes and we're going to put it right in our server.js file. Now, starting next week, what we're going to do is instead of putting our routes into that file, that's not a good practice. We're going to create a routes folder, and inside of there, if we've got different types of routes, they'll each be in their own file in that folder. Does that make sense? All right, because again, it's the idea of the same reason that when you are setting up stuff that you put it in different folders. We're just trying for some organization. For right now, this is fine. All right. All right. Then what I'd like you to do is back in Visual Studio Code right here. Again, what do we have right now? We've got the node modules folder. We've got the git ignore file. We've got the package lock JSON, which I talked a little bit about before. We've got our package.json, and we've got our server.js. So in other words, right now, everything everything is right under under our stock Node app. So in other words, if you look over here, that's what it looks like. All right. And yeah, we do have another folder. So, but every file that's in here is right directly under our stock Node app folder or stock app Node folder. All right. All right. We're going to add something then right now. So back here in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to click here. And instead of choosing new file, I want new folder. All right. We started to do some of this yesterday. Again, I'm doing it nice and slow, just in case, hopefully the sound works today and Gabriel will be able to try this on his own at home. All right. So we're going to create a new folder in here and we're going to call this folder public. All right. Now, we're going to change what we're about to do in just a couple minutes. But for now, what I want you to do is in that public folder that's right there, right mouse click and choose new file. And we're going to put an index.html in there. Make sure that you can see the way that this looks, and hopefully you can tell from this bar here that index.html is inside of your public folder. We're not going to put much code in here right now, just so you know. All right, we're not going to put much code in here. Instead, what we're going to do, what I'd like you to do, is to please, in another browser window, go out to getbootstrap.com. I'll tell you this real quick, and I don't want to bore you with stuff, but with the first year people, I think last year we didn't do a good enough job going through Bootstrap. All right? And maybe I'll even go back and either on Monday or Tuesday and I'll tape it. But I built this, and we did this as a class today. So I built this thing. Well, any of you know Alfano's Pizza that's down the road? I've never been there, but I saw it. And what Mr. Smith had down for their last test was they were supposed to create a one-page thing on a non-chain restaurant. So I picked this, and I came in here, put in, it's very simple, but put in a slideshow, put in this, all right, put in this, and those are just pictures I got from the internet, all right, put in all this stuff, all right, and you can see that it scales pretty nicely, it looks pretty good. I'm not saying it's fantastic, all right, but the whole thing is, I don't know, it's about 400 lines, but with those 400 lines, I'd say a good half of it, if not more, is just stuff we copied from getbootstrap.com here, all right? But what I'm saying is we may go over this next week for one of the periods, and I might even have you do it just so you get some practice, again, using Bootstrap, all right? Why? Because I don't want you to spend a lot of your time writing CSS, all right? I gave you that assignment, and it was mainly a CSS assignment, that first one that you did. That was in case you have to. Plus, Bootstrap supports both CSS Grid and Flexbox. All right. So, all right. So at getbootstrap.com, what I want you to do is scroll down a little, go to the Get Started link. And we could do this. We're not going to. But I mean, I could go back in here and I could hit the exclamation point and tab, right? And that would fill in and put in that template for us. And then we could come back into here and we could grab the link to CSS and we could grab the bundle link here, for example. We could do that. But it's much easier to just grab this starter template. So go down to where it says starter template and click the copy button that's here, or highlight all of it and do a Control-C, however you do a copy. All right. So I've just copied it to the clipboard. I'm coming back here. Make sure it's your index.html file. Of course, we don't want to put this in server.js. All right, and paste it in. Now, a couple of things about this. First of all, if you didn't know this already, you'll know it now. And if I never told you before, shame on me. But the first year people had never heard this before. You may or may not be aware of this. First of all, I can click here, right? And I can turn this thing on and off. I think you know that. But did you know that I can click View and go down to Word Wrap and it makes everything much easier to read. So that file is now word wrapped. So if you've got stuff that's constantly going off the screen, that's a much easier way for you to get around and do whatever. All right? Okay. Now, I don't think we have to talk about any of this stuff except just so you know, the stuff that's in here, that's put in there for security reasons. Not for what we're doing, but if you are a quote real company unquote, there's actually ways that you can check and for lack of better words, almost be alerted if somebody goes into these bootstrap files and makes changes to them. So if somebody would ever get into your system and do things they shouldn't be doing, okay? All right, so we're using the bootstrap CSS right there. And if we go down further, it says choose one of two. And you'll notice this one's there and that one's commented out. And what this has done is right here is it's, for lack of better words, bundled together both JavaScript and something that's known as Popper, which allows you to do pop-ups. So here it's bundled them together, and here it's separated them into two files. Well, using this one should be just fine. So I'm going to highlight all of this here and just remove it. I mean, I don't like to put extraneous code in there when I don't have to. All right. I mean, and that's something you really should get used to on your own. In fact, I don't need this. All right. And I really don't need the thing that says option 1. So like I said, I've cut it down. It's about 18 lines now. Make your own determinations about the comments that they put here and using the white space, etc., whether you want to do it or don't want to do it. The only thing I don't like about the way that this is set up, just so you know, is I don't like the way the tabs are set up in here. Okay? In other words, I don't like that this is just 2 over. I like it to be 4 over. Maybe you're cool with it being 2, and that's totally fine. So typically what I do is I highlight all of this. Again, you don't have to do this. And I just keep doing Shift Tab until everything is back at the beginning, and then I start moving it over myself. So I highlight these 3 lines and hit Tab. I highlight these lines here and hit Tab. The title line here and hit Tab. The H1 here and hit Tab. And the script here and hit Tab. You might have also noticed that it still is recommended. I'm not sure why. I think we could take this file right here and we could put it up into the head section and use that kind of newer defer tag, but people still seem to be doing it this way. But if you do it this way, your script line, the one that I've got highlighted here, should always be right above the ending body tag. Again, that's just convention to do it that way. All right, so I can save this, and if I go and bring it up in live server, I'm just going to get a hello world on the screen. That's it. It's not doing anything yet, and that's totally fine. All right. Okay. So right now, you want to shut that, you can, or even just shut it, and leave it, crack it, or whatever. It's all right. Thank you. All right. So I want us to go. Let's do a file save, just so it's saved if you haven't already. And let's go back to server here. Now, until we get into the database stuff, which is going to be darn soon, that app.listen is going to be down at the bottom of your program. So when I tell you to put something in there, make sure you put it above that. Okay, so we're going to put a little bit of code in here right now. So what I'd like us to put in here is, let me put the whole thing in. We've talked about this before. All right, but we're going to go over it again in just a second. All right, so I'll give you a second to put that line in, and then we'll go over it. Now, hopefully you remember this from the other day, but what we're telling Node right now is any static stuff that we're going to use, which would be HTML files, which would be image files, etc. That will all be in this folder that we created previously that we call public. So right now, all that's in there is index.html, but later we'll add some other stuff. Does that make sense? All right. And we are letting it know that where this lives. So we're telling it to join together. This right here, just so you know, this is that. It's stock app node. That's what underscore underscore dir name is. It's the root name or the name of the folder. And we're telling it underneath that, we've got a folder named public. And we're telling it that in that public folder, anything that's static is going to be in that folder. All right. In other words, typically .html, .css, and your image files. Okay? All right. So go ahead and save this. All right. Probably if I look in here, I'm going to guess since I saved, you notice my server started up again, which again that's good. So I want us to go back again into here. All right. And yeah, we can do that. It's still going to say this, but I'm going to try to change this. So all it says is localhost colon 5000 like we did before and hit enter. And you'll notice it says hello world. It's a kind of an important point because what it did was it understood our association and it said go out into the public folder and find a file. If we didn't give it a name here, default to index.html. Does that all make sense? All right. Okay, so not that we have to do this, but let's go back and let's go into our index.html file. And this is kind of a dumb thing to say, but I'm just going to put in here homepage. All right, and for the title, I'll put in stock app home. Does all that make sense to everybody, what we're doing, why we're doing it? All right. So we've got all of our homepage stuff in there, but now what we want to do is this. And again, there's different ways that we can do what I'm about to show you, okay? Let's see. The way I'm going to show you right now may or may not be the best way. So basically what I want to do is I want to make 2 copies of this. And I want one of them is going to be called about.html and one is going to be called contact.html. So you can do it any way you want. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to click on here again. I'm going to write, and remember, I can either now click here, right there, and I get a new file, or I can right mouse click on it and choose new file. Either one. So this will be about.html. Okay, so that's empty. I'm going to go back to my index file. I'm going to highlight all of it, Control A, Control C to copy it, and I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to make 2 changes, and you probably can guess what they are if you look on the screen here. I want this to say about, right here, and I want this to say about, oh, I screwed that up. Fix that, the other one. And I want this to say about as well. Does all that make sense? We now have 2 pages in here, and I'm going to go back to my home page because it looks like I screwed up that tag right there, so let me fix that. Oops. All right, then one more time, I'm going to right mouse click on here and choose new file again, and this will be contact.html. Hit enter, and again, I'm going to come in here, Control A, Control C, I'm going to paste that into here and make those same 2 changes. In other words, instead of home, this will say contact here, and it will say contact here. All right. All right. Now, My server, will guess at least, is restarted again. All right. And actually, since I didn't make any changes to my server.js file, it may or may not have. So I should have put a semicolon there and saved. All right. So I'm going to go back to here, and everything's cool. Didn't break anything. But notice now it says homepage. That's what we want it to say, right? All right. I'm going to come here and I'm going to say about. It says cannot get about. What if I put in about.html? Now it found my about page. All right. And of course, the last one that's left is contact. And there's our contact page. Now there's nothing in those pages yet, but they have all been bootstrapped. All right. Now, I don't know if you agree or disagree with what I'm about to tell you, but it seems kind of dumb. I've always thought this, that we have to go, would you agree that other than the title being changed, that basically that whole header section is the same between all three? Would you agree with that? And if we put a footer in, it'll probably be the same between all three. So in other words, let's go back and do that. We'll copy it to all three files. It's not going to be much. Let's just come in here into our index.html page, and right near the bottom, so right under where we are right now, let's put in a footer tag. All right, and we'll just put created by, put your name in there, don't put mine, ampersand copy 2021. You already know what that does. I should not have to talk about that with any of you. That should make sense. And then grab that footer, copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to put it into both contact.html and I'm going to put it into about.html. Everybody with me? All right. You can really put anything you want here as long as it's, it's something decent, I guess. It doesn't really matter that much what it is. So I put it into contact, and now I put it into about, and there, I've got that. So I've got that. When I go back to my about page and I refresh, that's in there. When I go back to my home page and I refresh, that's in there. All right. The reason that I'm taking the time to tell you this is what we're going to do fairly soon. And one of the reasons that you use these templating engines is so you only have to write that once. We want to write that once, and we want to be able to bring it into all three of our files. That way, if we have to make changes like I just did, you only have to change it in one place. I mean, let's say that I'd accidentally put 2020 on there, or 2022, or whatever. All right. Then I have to go back now and change it in three places. It'd be nice to change it in one place and have it propagate to all three files. That's what we're going to do in just a bit. All right. Okay. Do that. Now, you should already understand this, but if I go out right now and I put in hello.html, you don't have to do that. But if you do, what do you think is going to happen when I hit enter? Anybody want to guess? It doesn't exist. It's going out and it's looking for it. But since we put express in there, all right, and since we went in there and set that static folder, we didn't even have to set any routes. You know what I mean? We had to type in the right URL, but it knew where to go by default. That's good. All right, that's just less stuff that we have to do. All right. Now, let's go out. We did this the other day, but we're going to look at it a little bit again. Let's go out to npmjs.com. And I would like you to, in your search packages in here, I'd like you to put in express-handlebars. So express-handlebars, as you'd probably guess, we're going to choose the first one. All right. And really, from what I know, these are almost the same. Again, this HBS is for handlebars was built on top of this. I've actually used them both. This to me, when you first are starting out, it's a little bit harder because it's got a little harder file structure that you have to set up. Okay, but I want to first click on that one, and I'd like you to do the same. And I want you to look. First of all, this is what we're going to put in just a minute. All right, so npm I express handlebars. But I want to go down a little further and look at this. All right. Now, what it says here, because this is what we're going to have to do. This is different than it was for EJS. I'm showing you two different templating engines. We've looked at EJS, we're now looking at handlebars. And there are other ones. I mentioned there's Pug and there's a bunch of other ones. I think that if you understand Express handlebars and you understand EJS, you can understand any of them. All right, because I think that not that they're the hardest, but you should be able to understand them. All right, so let's look at first what we have to do. Well, we're going to have to add this. Don't even worry about doing it yet. We're going to have to add this though. Okay, and again, we use const. I don't know why they haven't updated their pages, but they should all be saying const instead of var. All right, then we're also going to have to put this in there. We talked about this the other day. This says, if you look at this, it says we have just created a variable. So from now on, when we refer to express handlebars, it's going to be expHBS. And we're saying the engine we're going to use is handlebars, and we're referring to it as expHBS. All right. Also, the view engine that we're using is handlebars. And when you say, well, why do you have to do all that stuff? You have to read through the documentation. It's boilerplate type of code. It's stuff that you have to add because you have to add it. And that's kind of sounds like, well, that sounds like a stupid reason. And you know what? I'd agree with you. It kind of is. But it's just stuff that we have to do. So let's go back and let's just do this in what I think is the best order. So grab this. Remember, you can either type this or you can just type an I. Either npm install express -handlebars or npm I express handlebars. I'm just going to grab theirs from right here. I'm going to go back into here. Now I have to stop the server from running, or I have to open up another git bash window. I recommend not doing that. I'd recommend stopping the server with Control C. All right, that stopped it. Don't worry if it said it crashed. It's totally fine. And now I'm going to paste that in, what I just had there. So npm install express-handlebars. All right. Again, if I had done something wrong, I'd be getting some kind of error messages in here. Typically, if you do get an error message when you try to do this, you spelled something wrong. You spelled handlebar instead of handlebars, etc. Something like that. All right. And again, not that you have to do this, but I want to go back one more time. And I'm going to double click or double check my package.json. And you'll notice that now I've got both express and express handlebars. Okay? All right. So that was the first thing that we wanted to do. And then taking this, we're not going to do an order. We're going to do this, but in just a minute. Okay? We'll do that in just a minute. Now let's see what we have to do in here, in our actual code. Well, we have to add that line. And again, we'll make it a const, and it should be someplace up near the top of your program. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go into my server.js file, and right under the express one, it really doesn't matter that much where you put it, but I'm going to make this a const. All right. You'll notice if you look right now that it's in gray. We talked about this the other day. It just means that right now it's not being used. It's letting us know that we've got extraneous code in there right now because we got code that we're not using. All right. So we've got that. All right. Then I'm going to jump back into here. And what else do we have to do? Well, we don't have these two lines. Don't worry about this yet. We don't have these two lines in yet. So I'm going to copy both of those. And it doesn't matter really if I put them above or below the app use statement. All right. Anytime we say app.something, all right, anytime we say app.something, notice in line 4, what is app? It's an instance of Express. So basically, we're telling it to do something that is Express related when we do this. All right, so again, we're telling it that our engine is going to be handlebars, and we're referring to it like this. And the view engine that we're using, and that'll make a little more sense hopefully in a minute, is going to be handlebars. With that view engine, basically one of the things that that's telling us is when we create files, they'll have to end with a .handlebars extension. Now, one reason that people like Express HBS as opposed to Express handlebars is that extension. If you use Express-HBS, then your files end with an HBS extension. Right now, ours have to end with a .handlebars expression. All right. Okay, so we've got that done. So let's look. Again, I'm not worried right now about putting that route in. But what I want to do next is this. And if you look up on the screen, please, what this says, and I'd like you to do this, whichever way is the easiest for you to do it. Okay? Right underneath our stock app node, right underneath that, we want to create a folder called Views. Look on the screen. Under Views, we want to create a file and a folder. So under Views, we want to create a file called home.handlebars, and we want to create a folder called Layouts. Under Layouts, we want to create a file called main.handlebars. All right? So I'm going to see if I can keep this up. And let's see. I'm going to do it like this, just so you can see everything. So let me get that up, and now let me bring that back. You can do it any way you want. So what I'm about to do, of course, you can do it right through Visual Studio Code. I just want you to be able to see. So I'm on my stock node app. I'm going to right mouse click on here, and I'm going to do a new folder that I call Views. And they expect it to be in lowercase. All right, so there's Views. All right, under Views, I'm going to right mouse click on that. I'm going to right mouse click and choose New Text Document. And I want that to be home.handlebars. Hit enter. Do you want to change the extension? Yes. I also want to put a folder underneath here called Layouts. And underneath that folder called Layouts, I want to create another file. That's, oh, not a folder, I'm sorry. I want to create another file underneath here, so text document, that's called main.handlebars. All right, yes, I want to change the extension. So again, when you look at this, if I jump back into Visual Studio Code, what I just did was this. I've now got a Views folder. My Views folder's got a Layouts folder in it, and it has a file called home.handlebars. All right. And in my Layouts folder, there's another file called main.handlebars. All right. Any questions? It may not make sense exactly what we're doing with those yet, but that's okay. All right. Then let's go back and let's add one more thing. So right here, hit enter a couple times, and then let's go back into here and let's find that actual line right here. All right. So copy those 2 or 3 lines, whatever it is that it happens to be. Copy those to the clipboard. Go back into VS Code, and in our server.js file right up above the app.listen, paste those in. All right. Now we're going to take a break in about 5 minutes, but before we do, I'm going to save because I haven't saved in a bit. All right. But before we do, I want to go back here because what we just did is kind of confusing. So I'd like to just take a minute and go through a little bit of this documentation that's on the Express handlebars page. All right. So notice what it says here. So first they go into layouts and they talk about the file called main.handlebars. Notice what it says. The main layout is called a page wrapper. So in other words, what we're going to be able to do after our break, hopefully if all works, is we're going to be able to get to our pages that we have right now We're going to move around, do a few other things to them. Don't worry about that right now. But the point is, we're only going to need to have that stuff that we put in there in the header section will have to only be in there once. All right. And footer will only have to be in there once. That's one of the advantages of this. Now, to do that, what we're going to do is in that file, it says the main layout can be reused, etc. This is what you do. What that is it's a placeholder. Any other file that we want to look exactly the same and use this main template, that'll replace body. We'll replace that with the actual file itself. And I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but hopefully once you see it in action a little bit, it'll make a little bit more sense. All right. So then they talk about this. Views home.handlebars. It says the content for the app's home view will be rendered into the layout's body. What does that mean? That means that's basically going to end up becoming the file that we want to up and show when the program starts. Does that make sense? All right. Now, the rest of the stuff you can read it, but you're probably going to get more confused than anything else, just so you know. Now, they do mention here, they talk about layouts. And notice what it says. A layout is simply a handlebars template with a body placeholder. All right. Like I said, we can go over the rest of it, but I think more than anything else, a lot of it you'd probably find confusing as we start to look through it. So we're making strides. We've been going for just about an hour now. So it is 1 o'clock. Let's come back, please, at 1:15. All right.